And our first speaker now will be Benjamin Hayden. He's an associate professor at the University of Minnesota, and he will talk about, there he is. He will talk about an architecture to learn untrained joints in macaques and other species. So Benjamin, if you could share your screen, please. Sorry for the technical problems.
All right, does that work?
Great. It does, it does.
All right.
So go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being a little bit patient. We were all trying to figure out what was going on. I will do this, well, it's a short talk anyway, so I'll just jump into it. Architecture. Well, basically, I want you to just take a look at this cool picture. This is a bunch of monkeys on a field site in Puerto Rico that we like to study. And we're going to talk about the way that we study these monkeys. And the work I'm going to describe today involves the coordinated effort of an enormous number of people. Just the tip of the iceberg is shown here. But I'll just say at the beginning, this is 3 labs working together. My lab in neuroscience at Minnesota, Jan Zimmerman's lab in neuroscience, and Hyun-Soo Park's lab in computer science. And then a lot of other people working really closely and really carefully along with us. Today, I'm going to focus on the work of Praneet Bala, Haozheng Yu, and Yuan Yao. So here's a monkey. Here's 2 monkeys, and these guys are in their somewhat natural environment. This isn't exactly where they historically lived, but this is a field site in Puerto Rico where we like to study them. Here's a picture of some monkeys moving around, and we're following them with a video camera. And here's some more ethological research. We're watching these monkeys groom and tracking them with a video camera. And so what my lab and the other labs that I mentioned at the start of this talk are interested in is relating neural activity to behavior. And this is actually something a lot of people do, but one thing that really is unique about our perspective is we're much more focused, I think, than most other people on understanding behavior in its natural, in its ethological context. And so for me, for the last 10 years, but especially for the last 5 years, that's been a focus on taking behavior and studying it in a freely moving context, as opposed to a plexiglass chair, understanding how behavior works in something like the environment that these monkeys are in. Understanding the brain activity in freely moving monkeys is very difficult, but it's much more difficult than actually behavioral tracking. This is a system that Jan Zimmerman developed, and he's, as far as I could tell, in addition to all his other talents, has a degree in engineering. He built this really amazing system. And I think what Jan would tell you is, despite the technical advances in this system, that the behavioral tracking is much more difficult than the neural tracking. So I'm just going to talk about behavior only today. We've been working for the last several years collaboratively on this 3 co-senior author paper that just came out a couple months ago, where we introduced OpenMonkeyStudio, which is a tool that we developed for monkey tracking. I'm just going to briefly introduce it to you because it's critical for the rest of the brief talk that I'm going to mention today. Here's a picture of our system. You can see it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. It's an 8 by 9 foot. For Europeans, it's about 2.5 by 3 meter cage, and it's 8 feet tall. It allows the monkeys to move around in 3 dimensions. There's barrels they can crawl on. There's ropes. There's tire swings we can put in there. There's a bunch of cool stuff. There's interactive feeders that monkeys can work with. They can press levers. They can look at screens. They can get reward. They can get food reward, juice reward, and we're going to track everything that they do with 62 high-resolution machine vision cameras. Here's another view of the same thing. You can see the whole thing is painted chroma key green, which is a special green that was invented for Hollywood that maximizes our ability to segment things that we see. So there's this rigid exoskeleton around the cage that mounts all these cameras, and on that exoskeleton, we're going to mount the cameras, look at the monkey from all directions. And so here's kind of some of the raw data that our system takes in. This is one monkey, and this is a nice video because it illustrates a few things. One is that these animals move a lot in 3 dimensions. Monkeys are arboreal creatures, and they like to climb and they like to crawl, especially the young ones. And so we're gonna need coverage of the entire situation, and that means we need that number of cameras. It also illustrates that even with 62 cameras, we only get monkeys in about 20 of the cameras at a time, so about 1/3 of them. OpenMonkeyStudio, I'm not going to go through the details because they're already published. I'll just say the number one question I get asked is how much data do we generate? We generate about 3 terabytes an hour. We usually do 4 hours of recording at once. And at the heart of it is a convolutional pose machine. A CPM is basically not too different from what Deep Lab Cut is. There are several of these out there in the academic sphere, and we use CPM for a couple reasons, but ultimately it's a similar thing. What really differentiates OpenMonkeyStudio is all the stuff that's on top of that. And the main thing that's on top of that is solving the annotation problem, which is really the most difficult problem. So let's see, why is annotation the big bottleneck? There's another cute picture of one of our guys crawling around in the ceiling of our cage. Monkeys are, as Jan Zimmerman likes to say, big balls of fluff. They don't really have articulated joints that are easy to identify. They have hair all over their body and often very long hair. You can't put markers on them, of course, but even markerless systems can't detect their joints. They move very rapidly and much more rapidly than most other tracked species relative to the size of their body. They have many more degrees of freedom. They move in 3 dimensions. So they have very complex and rich behavior. And I don't know how much any of you have worked with deep learning, which is basically the technique that we're using to do this. Deep learning is actually really, really poor at generalization. And you might not know this if you kind of read the news articles and you read Twitter, but it's actually quite brittle. And so deep learning is really good at looking through its archives for video of frames, annotated frames that resemble things that it's seen in the past and resemble the things that are on the screen and relating those to each other and using that to make a small leap, but it can't really do big leaps. And so you need to have a very rich database that's going to have all the rare things in it. And monkeys have a lot of very rare activities. And so solving that problem is going to really require a huge amount of work. In humans, the problem is solved by companies just pooling their resources. And it would cost us, we estimated, somewhere between $10 and $12 million to get a database for monkeys that's equivalent to what exists for humans. And we just don't have that kind of money. So basically, most of what's in the paper is a series of tricks and insights and hacks that we use to get over this problem and deal with a database that cost us about $80,000 to $100,000 to generate. So several orders of magnitude cheaper than humans, and get it to be as accurate as the kind of human databases. And the result of it is a system that compares well with Arbitrary. Does that mean I have 5 minutes left? Okay, I'll go really fast here. So the result is a system that can track 13 joints, and these are joints that we chose heuristically that we think are pretty interesting. But the first thing I want to talk about is what happens if you want new joints that weren't in there. And so this is Praneet, who was the leader on this OpenMonkeyStudio project, is now this is his follow-up project. And basically what he's doing is he's saying, what if you really wanted the right elbow? What if you wanted the ear, the left and the right ear, which gives you a rudimentary estimate of gaze direction? We could go do the same thing we already did to build OpenMonkeyStudio, but that would cost us another $80,000. We have to start from the beginning and have these images re-annotated. Can we, with a minimal annotation set, expand our system and get extra annotations essentially almost for free? This is very difficult with this standard 2-dimensional approach, which a lot of markerless tracking systems are. You know, just to give you an example, the distance between the butt and the knee is 60 pixels in this one image, and in a slightly different image, it's gone down to 8 pixels. And so you can't really solve this problem on the 2D representation. So you need a system that gives you a rich 3-dimensional representation, which our system is. And then once you have that, you can do this. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this. I'll just say the details of what we're doing here at a high level is we're building a system that can essentially teach itself a model of the skeleton frame of the monkey. It's going to teach itself how long each of the bones are in the monkey's body, more or less. And it's going to use that information because bones don't grow or shrink during movement to infer where the shoulders or the elbows or whatever are. And so we can actually do something really impressive with this. So Praneet sat around one afternoon and labeled 568 frames. So that's 2,000 images, just a little bit over 2,000 images. since remember there's 62 images for each frame, he just picked 4 at random with the monkey in them. And with those 2,000 plus images, he was able to get really nice tracking of a new joint that was not in the original annotation set. All right, so moving forward, I'm going to go very fast because I'm running out of time here. Hao Zhang's project is trying to do even more key points. And so basically what we're doing is saying, what's the limit to what we can accomplish here with the number of key points? So he's going to have a system where he's going to segment. He's going to use a kind of a very standard neural network to segment the monkey from the environment with a few extra tricks that I could go into if I had more time. And the result of that is that he's going to come up with a system that moves a mesh computationally. It's sort of like putting a robe around the monkey, a detailed 3-dimensional mesh around the monkey, and that's going to eventually result in a representation of the monkey that we can figure out where points are from time to time with high precision, in fact, arbitrarily dense precision. So this is a 40,000 point mesh that we've generated, tracking where the monkey is, using this system that I don't have really enough time to describe. All right, with 1 minute left, I will just I will answer the single most commonly asked question that I get, and that question is, what happens if you don't have 62 cameras? What happens if you're this guy, which is actually me 12 years ago, with 1 camera out in the field? How do we solve that? And really the question is, can we leverage the fact that we have a very large database now of 2D images with joints projected onto them and 3-dimensional representations, and the relationships between those, which are veridical and highly validated, to start inferring from photographs and from videos exactly where on the in space, or if not that, at least in the screen, where those animals are. And so we're going to basically leverage what we've already done to start doing tracking with minimal number of cameras, even down to as low as 1 camera. And so this is Yuan's project. And this is kind of the first image we've shown of our new system that we're calling OpenMonkey Wild. And it's actually very powerful. It started to actually have some real ability to estimate the position of various key points on monkeys and other primates from single views, even from single shots. And just to illustrate its robustness, here's some data that we collected from some other non-monkey primates. And I'll just add in that we're looking to build a very large database test set for this, and we're looking for about 50 to 100,000 photographs of monkeys and other primates. So if you have several thousand of those sitting around, give me an email. You can find my email on the Neuromatch site. Finally, we'll just point out that we can, one of the really impressive things about this is because we have this large database of 2D, 3D correspondences, we can start doing what's called lifting, which I think one of the next talks in the session is going to be about. Lifting is basically when you start to infer 3 dimensions, you start to do the Z dimension or depth from just a 2-dimensional image. You can start to guess where things are, and that winds up being very, very valuable for a lot of purposes in neuroscience and in terms of image processing as well. So Yuan's system can do these right now. And I'll just say this is very preliminary, but we're starting to take raw video and started trying to infer skeleton key points from these videos. This is definitely a very preliminary version, but this is the direction we're going. We're trying to do real life in the wild, ideally as fast as possible, tracking. All right, I just saw a 0, so I will say thank you to the entire team at OpenMonkeyStudio and to everybody else in my lab who's been extremely supportive of this sometimes very crazy, very ambitious project that we've been undertaking for the last several years.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Very exciting talk. So we have one question from Lawrence Hunt. The question is, I think you answered a bit of it, but it gives you some time to talk more about it. So Lawrence says, extremely cool. And does the challenge of generalization mean that it will only work in your room in Minnesota, or would you be able to generalize to larger, smaller rooms and other environments? And also, do you have a sense of whether the green background is essential, or whether it might work in home cages, etc.?
That's a great question. I would say that the green background has been absolutely essential for us to build our model and to get things working. Now that it's up and working for us, I think we can start to relax a lot of those constraints. So in some ways, this is like a physics experiment where it takes you 2 years to build your thing, and then you get your measurement. And then once you have your measurement, you don't need that thing you built anymore. So we're still using that in our room, and it's going to give you higher quality data. But I think we're going to be able to start helping other people. And we've actually got several requests from other people that we're working with to start building other systems at their places. And I don't think, for example, the green walls are essential. I don't think the particular dimensions of the room matter that much at all. You're going to need a certain amount of coverage with your cameras or your one camera, and that's going to be the most important thing.
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. So we'll switch over to our second talk, and that's Adam.